You are mostly not human. I know, creepy, right? But it's true. It's true. Your body is mostly made from a collection of microbes, mostly bacteria, plus some fungi and some viruses even, collectively known as your microbiome, also sometimes called your microflora or microbiota. You may have heard the term gut biome or gut flora, but the truth is you have several microbiomes. The main one is in your gut for sure, but you also have microflora in your skin, in your eyes, in your nose, your ears, your armpits, and pretty much every other habitable environment on your body. You are a walking collection of ecosystems. Matter of fact, without those little bugs, you would not be able to live. You need those little happy bugs, not just to live, but to be healthy and happy. In a way, it might be useful to think of your microbiome almost as something like an organ in your body, equal in importance to your health as your kidneys or liver. Your gut biome helps you digest food, supports your immune system, creates vitamins, removes toxic substances from your body, and possibly even protects you from depression and anxiety. Since your microbiome has a huge impact on your immunity, energy, general health, emotional life, mood, and mental clarity, it's super important to support and protect those happy bugs in your gut. And the way to do that is to feed them properly. And that's what people are talking about when they say prebiotic. Probiotics are the actual living microbes that live inside of you. Prebiotics are the stuff they like to eat. And what do they like to eat? Fiber. Fiber is made mostly out of cellulose, and cellulose is their favorite food. And just like every other living thing, different bugs like different kinds of cellulose. You might have learned in school that in nature, the most healthy and resilient ecosystems are the ones with the most diversity. In other words, the widest variety of different species. Well, same goes here. The more different kinds of critters you keep, the more different functions they can perform. So the way to grow the most different kinds of biota is to feed them different kinds of fiber. And you can do that by eating the most different kinds of plants. A lot of experts say you should aim for about 30 different plants per week, which is really not that hard to do when you think about it. If you eat a slice of one of those multi-grain 7-seed breads, you've probably just kicked back like 10 different plants right there. Eat a simple salad with some dressing that has some herbs in it, and that's maybe another 10, so you're already up to like 20. Not hard at all. Another reason to eat some plants is that your intestinal wall is coated with a mucus layer made partly out of plant-based carbohydrates that prevent your gut flora from going after your intestinal wall. If that layer is damaged, your microbiome can actually turn on you, so keeping it healthy is generally a good thing. Another way to support your microbiome is being in nature, which exposes you to a wider variety of organisms. Gardening, as it turns out, is excellent medicine. Putting your hands in healthy soil inoculates you with the wonderful microbes living in there. It's also just kind of, it's just nice, right? And as you might guess, there are a few things we can do that actually harm our gut flora. One of them is refined sugar, so try not to overdo it. And as you might have already surmised, eating a monoculture diet reduces the diversity of our gut flora. Makes sense, right? If eating a wider variety of plants results in more diversity, then eating fewer plants results in less. Living in an urban area, it turns out, also reduces the diversity of our flora. And studies have shown that the microbiome of urbanites is comprised of fewer species, and that as more and more humans move to cities, we're actually losing entire species of microbiota. So as alarming as species extinction is, it turns out that it's not only happening in the world around us, it might also be happening in our inner innards as well. In our inner innards. That's a mouthful. In our inner innards. In our inner innards. Who writes this? Oh, I do. Never mind. Well, another thing that can do a number on your gut biome is antibiotics. You might have already heard that you should follow a course of antibiotics with some yogurt to try and replace the healthy bacteria. And while that can be true, there's more to it than that. And it's better to just avoid antibiotics except when absolutely necessary. Unfortunately, there are antibiotics in meat raised in confined animal feeding operations. More than 2/3 of all antibiotics go to livestock, not humans, and that causes all kinds of problems, such as promoting the development of resistant pathogens, also known as superbugs. It's better to just avoid meat raised in those conditions in the first place. Try to support traditional family farms instead. Speaking of industrial-scale food production, there's a lot of evidence that Roundup can harm your gut flora, so that's just one more reason to eat organic when you can. Now, getting back to the yogurt thing, though, don't assume that all yogurt is good for you or even that all yogurt has probiotics in it. Yogurt has probiotics when it's made, but a lot of manufacturers pasteurize their yogurt, which kills them all off. You should also note that most flavored yogurts are loaded with sugar, so don't kid yourself. If you buy a sweetened yogurt thinking you're getting probiotics, you're being misled. That stuff has had all of its happy bugs killed off, and the sugar in it could potentially reduce your existing microflora. Sauerkraut and kimchi have a similar story. For one, only the ones made through fermentation have any probiotics at all in the first place, and most of that canned stuff at the store is made more like pickles. They can it in hot vinegar, which tastes good, but it has zero probiotic content. If you didn't buy it from the cooler section, it ain't the real thing. Real sauerkraut and kimchi are fermented and have to be kept in the cooler section, and even then, the ones that have been pasteurized are stale. Same goes for pickles. The fermented ones are loaded with probiotics, but the stuff at the room temperature center aisles of the store, it's as sterile as a hybrid Ginny Mule. My favorite brand of fermented deliciousness is Boobies. I don't have any relationship with them, and I don't get any kind of kickback. Although, hey guys, if you're watching, I'd love to hear from you. Hint, hint. But their stuff is fermented. It's loaded with pre- and probiotics, and it's 1,000% deliciousness. Seriously, best sauerkraut you'll ever have. Somewhere in the last 100 or so years, we became obsessed with sterility. COVID didn't help, but I think it started earlier than that. In 1905, Upton Sinclair wrote a book called The Jungle that exposed the filthy, dangerous, and exploitative nature of the pathogenic atrocity that was the meatpacking industry of its time. It was because of that book that Teddy Roosevelt championed food safety, and we started sending inspectors to meatpacking plants to help ensure the safety of our food. But the pendulum, as pendulums do, swung a little too far, maybe. This is also when the Industrial Revolution was really having an impact on the food industry. People were utterly enamored with mechanized food production just for the fascinating technology of it, but they also loved the idea of food that had never been touched by human hands. That's a little different from our current culture where we tend to value small batch, handmade, artisanal food, but just a few decades ago, we apparently thought everybody else was filthy, and perhaps certain people more than others. White Castle, the very first fast food joint, opened its doors not long after The Jungle was published, and it was very, white. The building was white. The decor was white. The uniforms were white. Everything about it was very, white. The employees worked in a kitchen that was in plain view so customers could keep an eye on every step and every one in there. I'd like to think it was a different time. But it bears mention that there's a difference between clean, sanitary, and sterile. Clean means all the gunk has been removed. Sanitary means that all the microbes have been reduced to a safe level. Sterile means that like 99.9 of all the microbes have been eliminated altogether. If your insides were sterile, you would not be able to live. Now, we should all be washing our hands regularly, and especially after performing, biological functions. I keep my kitchen very clean, and I'm always thinking about cross-contamination, and I use my meat thermometer consistently. I've taken the food handler's class a number of times, and I always observe those same principles at home as well. But maybe our whole world doesn't need to be absolutely sterile. Well, but I digress. Just clean up your act. Wash your hands. Clean your kitchen. Don't be a freak. There's a fascinating group of people in Tanzania you've heard me talk about before called the Hadza. Their lifeways appear to have not changed much in 30,000 years, and they have preserved their hunter-gatherer traditions. Their diet consists mostly of plants, though they do eat some meat now and then when they can get it. They generally get about 100 grams of fiber per day as opposed to the average American's 15 grams. They don't have hand sanitizer, they don't have industrial meat, commodity crops, or ultra-processed food. They also don't have metabolic disorders like we do. Things like diabetes, heart disease, and cancer are all but unheard of in their community. Their gut biome has about double the diversity of a Westerner's, probably because of the wide variety of plants in their diet. The standard American diet gets more than 60% of calories from just 3 plants: corn, rice, and wheat. Whereas in human history, we've eaten about 7,000 different plants, and it's estimated that there are more than 50,000 plants on the planet that we could eat. In the 20th century, about 94% of all seed varieties were lost, and we don't even really eat corn and wheat most of the time. We eat their processed versions as breakfast cereals, snack foods, and white bread. Most of the rice we eat is white, meaning that it's been stripped of most of its nutrition and fiber, so our food system has us eating less fiber and from fewer sources, and that's exactly the opposite of what our microbiome needs to really thrive. Now, as for those probiotic supplements you can buy at the health food store, I don't have anything in particular against them, but they generally only provide a handful of species. And those little bottles do nothing really to provide a healthy environment for your flora to live. Now, taking those supplements and thinking it's enough seems similar to eating an unhealthy diet and taking vitamins, which, let's face it, a lot of people probably do. It's insufficient for a lot of reasons, but chief among them is that that's just not how life works. Recent research is finding that the body works differently than previously thought. We used to think that the brain was like this unilateral dictator giving top-down instructions to everything going on, but there's more and more evidence that our organs work more like participants in different systems. Those systems talk to each other using signaling molecules such that your bone health is regulated by your kidneys and your appetite is regulated, kind of ironically, by your fat cells. Now, those systems need to be able to read one another's signaling molecules, and one way your body can recognize those molecules, it's hardly different from the way we recognize flavors. Every living thing has the ability to interpret that language and turn it into nutritional wisdom, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that your microbiota are no exception. And the mechanism of this language is feelings. Yes, feelings. In other words, biological dispositions and functions in an organism create a need state in that organism. It then seeks out that which satisfies that need. Now, one great example is the relationship between trees and fungi via the underground mycelial network that enables them to literally communicate and share resources. Biologists playfully call it the wood wide web. Cute. Even mother trees seem to be able to identify their offspring, which makes me question everything we think we know about consciousness itself. What we do know for certain is that every cell in every living thing has the ability to create chemical compounds to send messages as well as receptors to receive them. And here you thought this was just a harmless little YouTube video. Oh, and speaking of which, please do make sure to like and subscribe and leave comments. Those are the things that will support this little community of organisms. Super appreciate it. And speaking of the channel here, another way to really support your microbiome is to make your own fermented foods. The kimchi video I posted last week, the kimchi video I posted last week is an outstanding source of probiotics and prebiotics. And if you make it yourself, you can kind of think of it as being sort of personalized to your own walking ecosystem, which is kind of cool. At some point, I'll also post my recipe for fermented pickles, which are, well, let's just say some of my friends actually throw me a little scratch now and then in exchange for a jar. Pretty magical, and another great source of probiotics. But for now, it's time to wrap up this video. Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you next time. Ciao.